Welcome. I am Mara Elaine, and this is the Earth and Cosmic Wisdom series. These are conversations for evolutionary times. And really, I'm bringing into my little sacred space here amazing people that I've met on my own journey through life in the past 10 years or so. And those who inspire me, really, who are holding codes for the earth in these times. Practical codes, those who are also working with the earth in energetic ways, and more esoteric practices. And so it's my absolute honor today to welcome a man that I met maybe 7 years ago on the island of Malta. And his name is Peppi. And Peppi is an experienced ecological designer. He's an alternative farmer, a teacher. He's a consultant and permaculturist. And he's based, as I said, on the beautiful island of Malta in the Mediterranean. He is the founder of the Permaculture Research Foundation for Malta, with over 20 years' experience traveling and working on biofood production systems. So 18 years ago, Peppi began a very ambitious project, a permaculture project on a very dry, windy and arid landscape, which has since really absolutely bloomed and evolved through carefully designed and naturally occurring biodiversity. This permaculture hub is called the Bahriya Oasis Project, and I hope I've pronounced that properly, and has attracted many individuals, groups, reporters, and documentary filmmakers to experience Peppi's wisdom and that of the permaculture principles he has applied to this special land. Peppi holds a master's degree in advanced energy and environmental studies and has won a number of local and international awards in environmental and sustainability. His current mission is to inspire, teach, and share his wisdom and expertise, and to empower people to grow superfoods currently and foods from wherever they are, whether it is a rural area or an urban area. So very much welcoming you, Peppi, today. Let me just unmute here. Hi, how are you?
Greetings, Mara. Thank you. I'm moved by your introduction.
Well, it's all true. It's all you, right?
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me over.
Oh, it's an absolute honor. I really have been deeply inspired by the work that I've been following, that you've been doing over the years, and having visited with you on the land there years ago, I know how much hard work, dedication, and absolute graft I'm sure that you've put in, sweat and tears and all the rest.
I keep falling back on my own word. I say, I'm done. No more. And then I get back to it.
Right. Well, when it's your dharma and it's your calling, I think, you're brought along by spirit, aren't you?
Exactly. But also it evolves just like everything else, I guess. And the focus of the work evolves according to the times and according to, the wave that's happening around and the universal law and where we as a population are, where consciousness is, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So it just moves. You cannot keep building walls, for example. You build walls around your fort, and then you start to work on your fort, and then you build on the people's spaces, to populate that fort. It's like that, right? And then you keep going and going and going. It doesn't stay the same, right?
Right. Of course. And 18 years on that piece of land, that's a long-term relationship with one area, right? I'm sure. How have you grown, would you say, through that relationship?
It's a marriage.
Yeah.
It's a marriage. Yeah. Sometimes I get to open the photo albums. Some of them are physical and some of them now are virtual, so you go in and check and stuff. Like, for example, I've been doing a new webinar, and so I say, okay, those are the photos that I want to show from that period in time, And then it takes you down that memory lane, right? And it just brings back those memories, and with those memories are like those emotions and those like recollection of people that have been part of your journey as well in those times, and it's it's quite an intense and deep journey, and so many things have happened. It's life, really, you know. It's like where you're investing your life in, and your energy, and your dedication, and for me in this respect. And it's very fulfilling to see, you know, like still like I'm still ready to walk away from it, you know, like I'm still, of course I love it, and there's like a deep connection, but I'm also grown to a place now where I say, when it happens, it happens. The day I walk away, and in a way we have to walk away, you know, like in a way we have to leave this temple, this body, you know. And I was also lucky to have had a bit of like training as well as certain lessons in life to just be able to reach that conclusion, you know, like where sometimes you just lose things, and or, you know, some personal belongings or whatever, and you know, if you make it a big deal, then it becomes a big deal. But if you just drop it, and you like turn to the universe, just like the universe like gave you everything, is going to take everything away, in terms of like everything's always there, but in terms of the material world, like it came and it's gonna go. So if we identify with it too much, you know, we're gonna have a painful journey to disconnect from it. But if we enjoy it, we harness it, we embrace it, we play with it, we mold it, we give it the love, and then we're ready to go anyway. It's what it is. It's like you do your best, because ultimately whatever we're doing, we could be helping others to do their own thing as well, just by feeling liberated by seeing you doing your own thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. Thank you. Yeah. That non-attachment, even when there's been so much of your heart and of your soul invested in that land, you know, that's a huge gift to the earth as well to leave behind.
I think so. I think it is, especially when you connect with the land, and in a way, like for me, permaculture, which is for those who are listening, like of your viewers right now, and haven't heard the word before, it's a beautiful toolkit which encompasses the word permanent and the word culture. Now we all experience permanence, and we are also products of culture. I'm going to explain this. So when I say we're products of permanence, I'm not talking the rigidity of permanence. Like for nature, permanence is ingrained in change, in evolution. That is the way that nature creates its permanence. So it's always changing, it's always evolving, and that's why it's permanent, because it's only permanent in change. The only constant the only constant there is change, and rightly so. And the word culture comes from also the roots of agriculture. So agar is the relationship with the earth. Nowadays, agriculture has become something which is connotated with destruction, which is actually, you know, coming at a high ecological cost in the conventional world. But permaculture is a different, complete way. It's very holistic, and it's a toolkit of how we look at nature, and we understand through the lenses of these principles and ethics, and what nature does and how it does it. And then we are taught to replicate whatever nature is doing into a design, because everything that we see, right? And even sometimes that we don't see, like for example the wind, but today we know how the wind moves, you know, for instance. But there's patterns behind everything, like everything that grows, and in one way or the other has a pattern ingrained with it. So there's all these patterns in nature, There's actually some core patterns, and then there's a lot of variations of these patterns. And what I'm saying is that through permaculture, through this toolkit, we learn how to adapt these patterns into whatever we want to create in order to live, like not just survive, but live in a good, healthy, ecological way. And so permaculture teaches us that. It doesn't come from day to the next. You have to like spend time. You have to like maybe be guided, you know. And for me, it's been a blessing how I came across permaculture and learned about it, and it made so much sense. And when I remember very clearly the first day I kind of opened a book and I started reading about it. I was in Australia on this farm that I ended up by coincidence after an accident where I had lost everything to a burglar who had stolen everything.
Oh, wow.
I ended up on this farm, and then I started reading about permaculture, and I said, "Gosh, why didn't we learn this at school? Why didn't we being given this as our main subject? That's the glue for all the other subjects, because it makes so much sense." You know, there's so much sense into this that now I understand why, as a kid, I used to see farmers doing certain things and what made sense into doing them, and maybe what could be improved in them nowadays, or so on. It just brings everything into a beautiful coherence that's like a tapestry. And yeah, the reason why I'm saying all this is kind of that when I look at life through the lens and what I'm doing through the lens of permaculture, I can also honor so much the work that's been done by our ancestors. And when you honor that work, and like there are still some cultures that do, right? Like if, for example, if you go to Indonesia and you go to Bali and you see the Hindu people in Bali, they are always honoring their ancestors every day. At least there's at least twice or three times offerings to the ancestors on a daily practice, you know. And then there's so much beauty in that, you know, because they're honoring this energy that's been cultivated there before they even came there themselves. And you see a place like that that's got so much lushness and beauty, and there's so much art, and it's kind of a way of life. It's like, you know, it's difficult to, of course, you know, there's still like a lot of challenges like a lot of other places, you know, and there's the impacts of modern stuff like plastic and rubbish and capitalism and so on.
Right.
But still, apart from all of that, there's still like this I'm just giving one example here because there's so many others, you know. But you see that, of course, there's also like the Aborigines, and there's the Native Americans, and there's the Africans, and there's so many other tribes that go into this connection where they're always honoring the ancestors or checking in with the ancestors when they have to make big decisions, right? And it's something which I think is very much related also to us in the West, where when we've lost that appreciation and that connection and that respect and reverence and giving thanks to the energy, to the root energy where we actually came from, you know, we wouldn't be here without them, right?
Exactly.
But just because we can't see them with our eyes, you know, and I'm not talking just about the human ancestors, you know, because we have had so many other ancestors that nature is built through that. Now, because we're losing that connection, we're creating also this destructive way of living. So we're actually like destroying our own ecosystem, and eventually we're destroying ourselves if we keep on going with that way. And through looking at, again, through permaculture and looking at these tribes that are still connected with their ancestors and with Mother Earth, you know, how much wisdom can just be channeled like easily, you know, because when you respect that, it's like you're opening up to it and you receive that. It's like when you go to your parents and you ask for some food, if you're hungry, your parents are not going to deprive you of it, right? If
Yeah.
they have it, they're just gonna give it to you. It's like, and it's the same way.
And that's so important, and I completely invest in that as well. That reverence for the ancestors, and offering to the land and to the spirits of the land for that symbiotic relationship, right? For whatever wants to be born through whatever you're creating in a physical space. So I love that, Peppi, and I love that you are living and born of the roots of a very powerful place, Malta. You know, there's so much there, and maybe you could speak a little bit about, you know, the kind of temple culture that is there, or just, you know, because I'm aware of the potency of that place, which kind of drew me there in the first place.
Yeah. So there's also the conventional stories and the not so conventional stories, right, behind the temples that we've got. But
Yeah.
what no one can negate is that this island here is so populated with so many remains and different layers of history, and there are so many temples as well, and also that it's been up till recently that these temples are the oldest freestanding temples on the planet. This is what has been kind of in debate, but it's over 90% say that they're the oldest freestanding. Whether they're the oldest or nearly the oldest, it doesn't really matter. But what matters
They're
is
old.
that, yeah, they're very, very, very old. Yeah, much older than the pyramids. And so these temples are they are there showing us like how we've kind of evolved, and we now live such a different life, where we see that at such like an old age, the people that were like building these temples were already building these temples in coherence with the energy of where the sun rises and the summer equinox, and where the first rays in the morning hit, and that is where the altar is to receive that energy, you know, to bless whatever they wanted to bless. This is just one of the temples. I mean, some of the main temples, but one of them is actually the biggest one. And there's different stories, you know, behind these. Some say that these were built by these giants who kind of floated down during certain ice age, and then they ended up on the island, which was probably different size at the time. There's also remains of certain animals such as elephants on the island. So obviously these definitely at some stage the island was connected with the mainland, and then whoever was on that ice block that ended up over here and just ended up over here, and they were here for enough years to scale down in size, to evolve to the size in order to survive. And so there's these interesting stories which go in detail and more. But what's also one important thing to mention about Malta is that there's one of the most revered places when you are looking into temples around the world, where there's what we call the Hypogeum, which is an underground temple, and it's in the form of a womb.
That's right.
And there is the main space, which is where they used to say the oracle used to be, and it's done in a very special way. So acoustically, if also you're like a musician or someone that loves to work with sound, you know, like we did it once a long time ago, and we took some instruments down, but it didn't last long because we
Thrown out.
were stopped by the authorities.
Yeah, I tried to, believe me.
But it was enough to experience some really beautiful vibrations, like from a didgeridoo underground,
Oh.
and this was really amazing. Yeah, and it's a unique, very old temple which is underground, and this is called the Hypogeum, and it was found It was found accidentally when someone was excavating underneath their house and they saw this entrance, and then they followed the entrance and they ended up in this place. But what's really important to say is that this was found, but there's so many others as well that haven't been like opened up to the public, because at the time, if you found something like that, the government would take your land because it had an archaeological value.
Right.
And if you weren't compensated properly, you know, and you didn't have the understanding of like the importance of something like that to be shared with everyone else, you weren't going to share it. Because if you knew you were losing like your hard-earned piece of land, you know, or God knows how much more in depth, maybe you went in to buy a piece of land or something and you started excavating, and you knew that the government would take it away from you.
No.
There's a high likeliness that you wouldn't have shared it with. So I'm saying this, but this is a fact that a lot of like the olden places, especially, they're riddled with underground mazes and places and where there's so many things that link from one to another.
Wow. It's
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah. Definitely. There's a lot more to be uncovered there, and you know, yeah. I definitely. I'm looking forward to getting back there at some point. I didn't hardly get to half of the temples, but the main ones for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, then, in terms of your ancestors and the agricultural practices that would have been, that are traditional practices in Malta, because obviously you took over this piece of land that was arid and difficult to work with. I mean, what are the normal practices of agriculture there?
Okay, so up till when I was a kid, there was a lot of traditional farmers still.
Okay.
Up till when I was a child, and I remember quite a good number of them still farming small plots of land, which by Irish and UK standards they would be considered as gardens probably. But Malta is a small island and it's very rocky and it's very hilly. So there's our ancestors have carved terraces into the landscape, just as the Aztecs and the Mayas and the Egyptians, you know, like a lot of other civilizations have done similar works to the landscape to make it easier to farm and grow food. Now here what has been used a lot was the stone, the rough stone that's found around, and dry stone walls have been built mechanically, so it's a mechanical way of holding the land embankments to prevent erosion. But in those times, there was a lot of people that were connected to the earth, and they worked in communities and they helped each other. And life was working at a different pace. People had more time, and there was a lot more hands in these social fabrics. And they also had more water because the land wasn't as covered by buildings and asphalt and concrete as we have today, and there was also less people, so it was less populated. So all these factors equal to an equation where the springs were more alive and there was more of them, and we never had rivers by like European standards, but we always had springs and water flowing. However, because of the modern civilization progressions, there's been a lot more land than there was at the time that's been covered and choked from water percolation, natural process of the hydrology of the land. And so what happens then is naturally that the springs start to have less water that goes into them, and then they start to dry up, right? And obviously when without water there is no life. Everyone knows this. But we still keep acting upon ways that is so like I don't even want to say what the word is.
Yeah.
But, but it's an oxymoron way of going around things, right? Because you know that you need water to support life, and then you're creating something to throw water away, creating something that's going to create erosion, creating something that's going to, like, I'm giving you money, and you know that you can use it in a good way, but instead you're just burning it up. Like, it's the same reasoning, you know, because water is a vital, it's actually much more than the same. Water is a lot more vital than money, but we're treating it as if it's like you know, something which you ought to just discard of, right?
Yeah.
And what's really mind-boggling is also that we've had funded projects where, like, they're thinking of fixing the landscape so that it doesn't get disturbed by rain when it rains heavily. Yeah.
Right.
And we're creating tunnels to just, like, really fast track that water to the sea, rather than thinking in ways of, like, how do you slow down the water in the landscape and give it the route that it would naturally take across the valleys, and hold on to it a lot longer so that it gets time to percolate down through the landscape and hydrates the land and recharges the aquifers, and then the springs will come back. It's common sense for people like myself, right? But unfortunately, for the leaders and the people taking certain decisions in the country, this is just rocket science. It's just like, no, we have to create tunnels to divert the water away, because it can cause damage for the people that are living down the valley, you know. So we've created an infrastructure that is highly unnatural and also destructive, and it's self-destructive, because nature itself is going to destroy that at some stage or other, and yet we're pumping millions down to try and hold it or keep it going. Yeah, so these things are obvious things that that we're going to come up against at some stage, you know, because nature's patterns don't change. Nature's patterns repeat themselves, and sometimes between point A and point B of repetition, where, like, it's a wave, for example, sometimes that happens in 1 year, sometimes 10, sometimes 20, and sometimes 100 years, but it's definitely going to repeat itself. And these lessons don't seem to inform politics and policymakers today, and this is why we're in such a mess.
Yeah. And this is why, you know, people like you are so needed, you know, and all of us that are trying to learn and find ways to sustain life.
I guess we have to do what we can do, and continue along the path of sharing what we do and sharing what we know, and that's what I do these days. I don't try and shout at these people to, you know, to try and inform them, because it's pointless. You know, it has to happen the other way around, and the other way around is by doing what you do, and then you create the magnitude of those that feel the calling and want to be part of that, right? So it's more like a snowball effect kind of thing.
Yeah, and you're serving in a much greater capacity then, because you're not distracted by the negative programs, you know, that is already being fed by those agendas.
Yes,
you know.
I very much like to think that way too.
Yeah, I think you have to, or you go insane. You wouldn't be able to action anything.
Exactly that. I feel that, you know, even when you start, like, I had my life on Facebook today, and I just did that to tell people about the webinar that's coming this Sunday, and then I left it on, and I went to do something. The first thing that came up after I was, like, doing something was the World Health Organization about the coronavirus, and just, like, warning us about how, you know, how much worse it's going to be for those countries that aren't actually doing what, you know, what the guidelines have been telling people to do.
I know.
You know?
I had a conversation yesterday, and all we could say was, it's just a shit show. Everything right now is just crazy.
Yeah.
It really is.
There's so much negativity ingrained and so much fear.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that these things don't happen. These things have always happened. But the more we shine the lens on them, rather than shine the lens on things that are progressive and productive and natural, and the way that nature like aligns in order to create. It's like the glass, right? If you see the glass half full or the glass half empty, you're gonna see it the way it is. But I mean, you're gonna see it the way it is. But the way you perceive it is the way that's going to affect you.
Absolutely. Which is exactly why I just felt so passionate about, bringing the people who are doing the work really and embodying their craft and helping in the ways that they can, these conversations and these life stories out to others, so that they can see that there's a lot more going on, and there's people living and thriving even in these difficult times.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, because people are, their roots, they're being traumatized, their roots are being pulled, they just don't know, they're like bandying around in the storm.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure, there's a lot of this. Fear disconnects us, fear disconnects us, and this has been a really like intelligent virus. And I'm not talking about corona, I'm talking about
the bigger virus.
the bigger virus. To disconnect the people and disconnect us from being able to be outside in nature and being able to be free to connect with others and hug on an intimate level.
I know.
For example, when people are disconnected and when they're in fear, you're not living into your greatest potential, obviously, and also your immune system is jeopardized, because if you're stressed and on a constant basis and you're in fear, then we know what happens to the immune system. The immune system then is not operating at its optimum, and there's a lot of opportunity for anything which is in the form of a disease of any form or illnesses to actually propagate themselves in our bodies, right? And this is exactly where we're ending up in with all this propaganda. And I'm not, by all means, I'm not saying like, don't listen to any of this, but I'm saying that it's so important that we do not fall into the trap of being in fear and living in fear and just giving our energy away by just following more news and more news and more news. Like, you know about it, all right? You know about maybe how you can protect yourself from this thing, but at the same time, the best way to protect yourself is to stay positive and you do your thing and you connect with nature as much as you can, and you keep your immune system alive by also ingesting the right foods and doing the right practices of like keeping your body in good shape and not exposing yourself to being in harmful environments for a long period of the day, like most of us are at the same time.
Yeah, and increasingly so with all of this online, AI advancements.
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect lead into what you do and what you have been doing on your farm and in the oasis there. Bringing people together and teaching and getting people's hands in the soil, which is like everything that reconnects the whole chemistry, doesn't it?
Exactly.
What's happening with, obviously right now that's not happening. So what are you working on at the moment with that?
Yes. So I was also growing micro herbs and specialty herbs and greens for a lot of the top restaurateurs in Malta, and hoteliers, and for these last now coming to five years, I've been doing it. I've had also people working with me, and but the last couple of years it was kind of starting to be a bit dragging. My heart wasn't in it because I never went into it to serve restaurants. I went in it because I love the cultivation and I love to see these type of foods, which are actually, most of them are superfoods. And I wanted to share this with the world, right? I wanted to like take it out, and I hoped to see a lot of people that are on like plant-based diets and vegans and vegetarians to just jump on it because it's so great, obviously. But I was seeing that it was more being used by restaurants to decorate plates, which I don't really support myself, which is like the meat industry, you know, like, and these were like ended up being most of my main customers. Like they wanted my material to make their material taste better and look better. And and now it was like going up against my beliefs and my philosophy, you know. And but at the same time, there's beautiful human beings that don't know what they're doing, but they want my product, and so like I ended up being a bit torn about it, right? Like, and I was just like praying for the last 2 years. Listen, I've had enough of this. I don't want to do it anymore, you know. But then obviously I had people working with me and they wanted the job, and I had these people asking for the product, and it's just like, what do you do, right? So I'm like rethinking myself. How do I get out of this? How do I stop this? At the same time, most of the vegans and the vegetarians, they're not like jumping on it and taking this product, right? It's like, it's kind of weird sometimes, you know, like what goes on around. And then I was about to go to Portugal because I'm also working on a project over there. And then the coronavirus pandemic started. And so like my person who was working with me was away, and he got caught in Germany, so he couldn't come back. And then I ended up here and I couldn't go. And all the restaurants closed, obviously, with what was happening. So the clients for that just like basically, so my kind of prayer got heard indirectly, right? With all of this, it's just, while at the same time, all these people that had been asking me to produce online courses, so that, you know, I could reach an audience through the digital platforms, they kind of started come back. So now's the time to do it. Now's the time to do it. And so I resisted the idea still for the first month. I was just doing works on the farm. I was doing maintenance and connecting stuff. But then I said, okay, it makes so much sense that I will create the courses online, and I just make them in a way for others to benefit from them. And right now, what better way to be equipped, rather, to if you knew that between now and the middle of next week you're going to have superfoods growing at home, from just having a box of seed and another box with jars, and you know, could lead to another even box with some stuff growing together inside, not even outside, with no prior experience whatsoever, and not more than 5 to 10 minutes a day. Would you do it?
Oh, yes. It's so empowering. It's so empowering.
It's super empowering, right? Like, it's like all of a sudden, like, especially for those people living in urban spaces where they don't have much accessibility to the outdoors, where they don't have a garden, where they don't have like a place or experience even, you know, about gardening. And you knew that like you can have enough food to feed yourself and your family in like a box maybe this big, you know, with seed, and another box with jars and stuff like that. And whatever, if we had to go to another wave of pandemic lockdown and closure madness, you know, if we had to go to another phase like that, and you can't reach the supermarket in time, or the food has gone off the shelf or whatever, wouldn't you want to have a box like that, you know, and the knowledge and experience already now, which doesn't take much at all. If you knew that, you know, you could just jump on a course and had this, someone teaches you like step by step how to do it, and then also have some accessibility to some online support, who wouldn't do it? Like, especially if you have a family that, you know, you feel like responsible and children for, and so on. So for me, it's just like I kept on, like I said, the most way that I can like feed it and like and fast track this was to teach people how to cultivate sprouts and microgreens at home, so that anyone can do it. You don't have to grow microgreens to the most beautiful ones that like I do in a greenhouse or whatever.
Right.
I mean, of course you can, but in order to have a superfood, you don't need to go down that route. All you need is to just do the basics and have the right seed and some clean water, and that's it. You started and you're on your trip, and like within a week, this is like it's something which is like next level. Within a week, you can have food on your countertop, and you can store it in your fridge, and it's going to last you another week, and you can stack and keep on going and feeding your family. Not just food, we're talking about superfood, food that's full of living enzymes and full of vitamins and the right combinations of fiber and protein and material that's going to feed your body and keep you healthy, as well as also help you fight anything which is damaging to your body. And we're talking about stuff like cancer here. We're talking about stuff as also like autism, for example. There's been like research recently that is just mind-blowing. The chemicals that are the natural biochemicals that are present in some of these sprouts, like for instance sulforaphane, is just one of these things that's really being studied at the moment, and some companies are tapping into patenting the isolation of this chemical, for example, because it has so much power, And when you look at these things, it's just like we don't see them, right? We don't see them in our day-to-day life, and it takes the enthusiasm of someone like myself or a few other ones that just go in and just like push it out there, and then you get a percentage of people who say like, oh, this makes sense. I'm just going to jump on board with this and make it work for myself and my family, right?
Yeah.
And I realized that I can teach permaculture over so many people, but I understand that with the challenges that we've got at the moment, not everyone can spend a couple of weeks learning the basics of permaculture to change so many things in their life, but everyone can spend 2-3 hours, and they read the stuff that I've put, they watch the videos in 2-3 hours, and they're equipped, ready, and they have some support, and they have a group online, and they've also got everything ready there to start their little farm at home, which is
it's like brilliant. It is, and isn't it fascinating that there's such a veil around actually just steeping, you're growing some little sprouts. It's so easy, right? But yet it's so complex. People can't even comprehend to take that move. Yes. So I think it's fantastic that it's so timely. The universe has really like just brought you right in with exactly the medicine that's needed for right now.
I believe so too. Of course, there's a lot, like I do these webinars, and I kind of like to take my time to show people about like the magic that's inside just a little seed, And again, talking about patterns, how the patterns that nature kind of keeps putting out there, and how we can see them again in different life forms, and how similar we are in these life forms, and how I like to mention seed as potential. Yeah. So you can have potential, like you can have seed, but it could just be there, and it can either be dormant all of its life, it can waste away, or you can find the right conditions for it. You sow it, you cultivate it, and you grow it into a lot more potential. Because again, nature just aims towards abundance, always. There is nothing which aims towards self-destruction in nature, in the bigger picture, okay? It's not like a genetically modified seed. That works the other way around. So a genetically modified seed aims for self-destruction. So you cannot have it the next year. So you have to go back and buy it from the same person that made it. Yeah, if you want it again. But in nature, the seed is programmed with the program to create itself 1,000,000 times over and continue to do so. So can you see this paradigm between like what nature does to what we're creating in the modern times? They're completely going opposite each other. So we're going against nature when we do these things. That's why it is so unfair and it's so unnatural, because just for some gain of financial like blindness, we are gone on a self-destruct program, basically, which is completely opposite to what nature intends to do when it programs this life and the synchronicity.
Yeah, thank you. And it's so sad. It is so sad. But I mean, it is really so intrinsically connected to, you know, our individual awakening and people's heart and souls opening to the level that they're able to embrace their own inner nature, right? And that of the external, of nature herself.
Yes.
And I believe that is happening, but you know, it's taking some time. But I certainly have faith that it's happening. Whether we're going to be able to bring the planet around, or you know, work with her before she throws us off, I don't know. But
yeah. Again, it's yes, of course, no one really knows these things, and in nature we are still such a minute speck.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
our egos are so big, but in nature we're such a minute speck. And again, nature works in different ways than we think. Nature works in such complex ways. And again, nature is always geared towards abundance and balance. Even when it seems that there's this balance and destruction, that is part of the cycle. And that part is only to bring back the organized order that's aimed towards abundance and order. So what I mean is this. So like, I'm sorry if it's a bit too much, but
No,
I'll
this
just
is great.
I'll give an example here. So if we had to have whatever, a tidal wave or a volcanic eruption or something which is not happening in the day-to-day thing, right? Like for a human perspective. These things in nature happen. Sometimes they're triggered by actions done by humankind, okay? But sometimes they aren't, and directly. But what happens is that nature responds to some trigger to disrupt the behavior of that pattern that isn't cohesive. And it disrupts that by taking it down, taking it back. But again, it's not your normal thing in our planet. So on our planet, there's life, and that's what's growing. Yeah, that's life, and we can see that, obviously. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. And the natural and the normality of patterns is like like if you even had to see a crack or in a roadside curb which hasn't been used, or a disused plot of land that's been destroyed by some machinery or whatever, a few weeks later you're going to start seeing weeds, right, that starts to germinate and plants start to grow. So this is nature's way of recreating a garden, recreating an ecosystem from scratch, in order to create diversity and abundance and attract other life forms so it can grow. This is nature's own way, like to always, it's aimed towards that. But sometimes what happens is that when there's something that becomes a pest in nature, then something else has to come in and wipe that pest off and brings it back in its balance. And sometimes these like taken in heavy scenarios, right? Like in whatever that is. I don't want to like go into this too much over here. Yeah. But these are like small intervals and intermittent actions that happen in nature to bring an action or a pattern that is destructive. It destroys it even faster. Nature does that so that then it creates again the platform to start growing again, start creating abundance again. And we are at a stage where we as a human population, our ways that we are incorporating and our ways that we are operating by and what we are doing to the planet, we are becoming like that pest where like there's too many mosquitoes around that I cannot handle it anymore. So I'm gonna come and I'm going to use something which I wouldn't usually use,
Mm.
but I'm going to have to use it to take the population of the mosquitoes down, because otherwise they're just going to eat me alive. So Mother Earth is just like that, or like a parent with a child, where a child starts to be naughty, and then he starts to become a pest, and it starts to become and then the mother has to like put the child straight, right? It has to kind of show him and discipline him in a way that he behaves himself in a way that is coherent with being, part of the family, right? Because otherwise he's just going to destroy the family with trouble. And that's what's happening right now in the human collective. We have grown a lot, but we haven't grown a lot and remained in balance. We've grown a lot, but our ego has grown a lot bigger. And we think that we can now rule the mother and be naughty and be idiotic and be stupid and just keep on going that way. Where, in fact, right now, we've just gotten a few warnings. And right now, we're just giving another warning and another warning. But very soon, if we continue, we're going to get the slap.
And a big slap at that. Yeah. That's brilliant. Thank you for speaking to that. Yeah. Yeah. And we need to be reminded of that constantly right now. That we don't go back to sleep, that we've been given this opportunity now to really, harness our innate capacity to cooperate and to work in synergy with her. And, it's definitely time. So I hope that people, and I see people around me in Ireland definitely starting to grow their own food. People I never would have thought, have received the call, and whether that'll be sustained now or not is another question. But it's timely, and I feel we're supported. And like yourself, who's been doing this work for so many years, there now needs to speak more globally to people who haven't been exposed to the earth in that way, and to understand that it's so easy, really, to start from where you are, right? That's what your course right now is all about. That is starting from where you are.
Exactly. Yeah. It's looking right in we call this in permaculture zone zero, which could be your own personal space, but zone zero or zone one is your then immediate environment. So it's your room and your house, depends where you live, or if you share your house or not. But that's your immediate zone. It's your immediate environment. And we really need to start from there, as well. Like when it comes to keeping sane and to organizing our space in a way to turn that into a sanctuary,
Yeah.
And, we don't have direct control about what's happening everywhere, obviously, but we have, to a certain degree, control of what happens in here and what happens in our own immediate environment. And of course, that takes discipline, that takes discipline to maintain it and clean it and keep it in that way, especially what we do here. That takes a lot of discipline, right? That's why we have, like, in the East, we have, we have the traditions of like following a teacher for many, many years who keeps you on track. Right. To maintain your focus and maintain your ways of thinking and maintain the clarity and the energetic field that's like not polluted.
Yeah. A mentor or someone, who was actually embodying that wisdom or consistency of personal mastery, I suppose you'd speak to.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It is, like in the West, a lot of people have difficulty to relate with that, because we in the West have been given the idea of individualism and like you don't follow anybody or whatever. You're not following someone because you're following someone. You're following that someone, if it's your mentor and that you trust, because he's showing you your own way and how to actually embody the power that you've been given, like that seed, that potential. He's just the gardener who's like helping you like germinate that seed and grow it enough until it's strong, that it's got enough roots and it's got enough foliage to maintain its own way. And then you don't need, of course you still need, because you still like give thanks to your ancestor, your mentor, right? Like a plant knows its gardener, and the plants change when the gardener enters the garden, and the same thing happens with this. It's like you find someone who you really vibe with in terms of whatever that is in life. That's a mentor, you know. It could be of different sorts, but whatever you vibe with and your passion is, when you find your mentor and you trust and you follow that, you know, you're following them because they help you understand yourself better, and they kind of help you to bring out more of the potential that's inside you that hasn't found its way yet to be expressed.
Yeah, definitely. And there can be many teachers along the path, but it is
exactly.
So personal practices are important, and I think with the superfoods and you know, the seed as potential for our own potential, and then the superfoods, really, in my experience anyway, from working with them, they really take your own frequency and vibration to another level, right? They're living beings working within you, right?
It's amazing. Thank you for bringing this up, because most of the time in the conventional world, we're going out there and getting foods off the shelf, or even fruit that has been shipped from the other side of the globe, and God knows how many hours it's taken to arrive to your shelf, plus all the embodied energy that it's got behind it. And that means the energy that it's been used for creating and mining fertilizers and fungicides and pesticides, and then transportation and packaging and refrigeration and again packaging. And it's just like, you know, most of the food that we eat just doesn't make ecological sense at all, you know, and it doesn't make any energetic sense at all either. Whereas if we had to be growing our own food, we have a lot more food that's growing, one, within our own immediate environment. And so that food is, say, for example, if you ate honey, and the honey was from your local area, the honey is coming in from flowers that's in your environment, in your ecosystem. And because you are exposed to that ecosystem, those flowers in your environment, they create the pollen. And the bees go and collect pollen, but they also collect nectar. And they bring it to their hive. And then, like, if you ate some of that honey, like, now I don't want to go into like plant-based or vegan or whatever, but like, if just to get the example, is like, if you ate some of that honey, you're eating a part of your ecosystem. And so your body knows that because it's breathing it through the air that you breathe. And even if you do have an allergy towards some flower or other, if you understood what you're taking slowly, or like homeopathically building to it or whatever, you are building your immune system, right? So that you can tolerate, and the body then changes what the way that it behaves, the way that your body triggers back sometimes certain mechanism. That's how allergies develop. But then there's ways how you can teach the body not to react in that way. And with superfoods, what we do is, rather than we're ingesting food that doesn't have any nutritional value, that's dead, it doesn't really have any alive frequencies in it. You know, these types of dead foods, this is what is causing a lot of problems in ourselves. Like imbalance of chemicals that wouldn't end up there naturally if you had to be eating live foods that is around you. And so we're getting these, you know, challenges in life because we've become accustomed and thinking that that's normal to go to the supermarket and buy these packaged foods and processed foods, and then cooking them even like in ways that aren't like, you know, normal for like, you know, they weren't normal just thinking like 60, 70 years ago. That's not so far, you know. These things would never have happened then. And just 60, 70 years ago is nothing. It's just not even a split second for the human evolution, right? And yet, like, we went back like from breakneck speed to changing our diet, but our our bodies haven't changed. Our genetic code hasn't changed. I mean, it's getting changed. It's being like damaged by these foods. And that's what we're reacting to. So if we had to pull the plug out of there and we start to then like eating superfoods, and there's many different types of superfoods, from fruits to mushrooms, and to what is the easiest, which I'm like advocating a lot, is like sprouts and microherbs and microgreens, because they're the quickest also to grow. And they can contain quite a wide variety, and you can easily have them, and the body can break them down really easily, because they're also at the sprout level, which is just the stage after germination and starting to grow. The nutrient capacity in them is at least, and this is no joke, it's at least 5 times more than the actual relevance. So if you're having a broccoli sprout, it has 5 times more the nutrient capacity punch inside it to a full-grown broccoli, for example, right?
Wow.
So it's like, and it goes more than that. This is just, I'm going for the minimum one, right? But the enzymes that these have, and the energy, because they're just coming into life, you know, and the fibers that are like, there's 2 different types of fibers, but they're both really, really necessary. Sorry, I'm just gonna switch something off that I might have, like making noise on this. Sorry for that.
No problem.
So what I'm saying here is that we are having these foods that they are the right combination, and they're at their utmost vitality to regenerate our own body. So when our body is when we're ingesting these types of foods, our body recognizes them much faster, and it pulls them in, and it starts to regenerate the new cells with these beings, you know, with these like energies that we're taking. And then the body becomes younger, and the body starts to lose excessive weight, so you can like combat things like obesity and weight loss. You can also have, you know, there's a transition period as well. Things don't just happen from one day to the other, right? But things do happen from one day to the next, as in types of healing the body. And because the body then starts to use these foods, and starts to rebuild itself up. And this is just fascinating, and you can keep on going in the science of this, you know, but you don't really need to. I mean, it's because I'm so passionate about it that I keep going and finding things, you know, like by studying more and more. But you don't need to do this. You can just like follow the basics, and you eat it, and you're having all the benefit anyway. You don't really need to understand what names and terminology were given to the biochemicals in these plants, you know, and what they're doing to your body. We know it's good already.
Yeah, and just you develop, you feel it pretty quick, you know, depending on where you're at, and I suppose if you've high levels of toxicity. But they're mighty magical little beings for sure.
Yeah, just on that shelf over there, I've got a little farm at the moment over there, where the light is.
Oh, a little stacked tier.
There's a number of them stacked up, and then there's a lot of angled jars. I don't think you can see them clearly because it's very dark at the back.
Yeah, the jars are great. Is it easy to get seeds, Peppi? Like,
so I don't know in Ireland. Definitely, you can get seed easily from the UK, because I actually myself have up till this year I bought seeds from the UK, because I was growing on a commercial level, right? So I'm constantly buying, you know, like
large
kilos of seed. But I'm definitely sure that you can get them even in Ireland. If you can't get them directly in Ireland, it's easy to get them from like England, for example, you know. And ideally, you look for seeds by growers that are, you know, they're not treated with chemicals. That's definite. You need seeds that's sprouting grade seeds, so they are fresh. They would be from the last season.
Right.
You need to make sure that your seed is of that kind. and then you should have no problem with cultivating your sprouts and growing your greens.
I've been putting off for a while. I've been sprouting intermittently, but now since seeing all your good work, I'm back on it. It's definitely I have been buying them actually from a farm that I used to work at, and they're phenomenal. But I do sense that for people to get proactive about purchasing seeds ahead of time, because if we do go into some sort of a recession or like even famine period, whatever that looks like, through another outbreak, I think it's that might be an issue
For sure.
in finding them. Yeah.
Sure. In fact, this is one of the things. But like, if people just don't jump on this,
the wave,
sharing, we might, like, it's a risk we take. Like, I've just purchased another batch, and financially it's a risk because I buy in big kilos. But I'm thinking also of the other people around me in the community to support them, and I always do that. I always stick my neck out,
Good.
But yeah, it's a risk because also if like risk financial, I'm talking about, because you spend like a couple of €1,000 on seed or whatever if you're really gonna go for what I usually do. And seed still does have a shelf life, you need to make sure that you look after your seed, that it's stored correctly, and that's used properly. So like at some stage, you're either going to buy seed again, or you're going to grow your seed if you have the space. If you have the space, you're going to grow some of your seed to produce more seed.
Yeah.
And so for that, you want to make sure that the seed that you bought is what we call heirloom seed.
Right.
It is seed that has been brought down through generation after generation, and it is not hybridized or genetically modified.
Yeah.
When I say hybridized, it means that seed that's been specifically designed to have been mated between two types of plants, which doesn't quite happen in nature, because in nature you have an open pollination system, and nature is so intelligent that it knows, how pollination happens, and that seed just gets transferred down from one generation to another. Whereas when it's hybridized, you have usually just two different types of strains, and they are usually like constrained within a greenhouse area. And then there's types of insects, like types of bees that are used to pollinate, and they can only pollinate between these two. There's not like an open pollination that happens. And then because that the preferred characteristics of the two plants is chosen by this hybridization, and so the next crop comes through towards that preferred cultivar.
Yes.
But because that doesn't happen in nature, the seed that cultivar produces will not produce seed that's true to its predecessor, to its parent, right? Because it doesn't happen in nature like that. And so that seed wouldn't lead to a number of genetics that continue down the line. So they are usually less strong. They will either revert to one of the characteristics of the parents, or they end up in a dead end lane, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure that your seed is heirloom.
Yeah.
If it isn't heirloom, if it's hybrid, you can still use it to grow sprouts, but you cannot use it to grow seed again.
To go to seed.
Yeah. And if it's genetically modified, I would stay away from it.
Yeah. No, that's a no-go.
Exactly.
That's great. Well, you've given us so much wisdom, and there's many threads in there that I'd love to dive more into with you, because I think the wisdom is vast, and you're bringing so much with. I mean, it's not just simply the superfoods. Obviously, you've definitely embodied a lot of elemental wisdom and your own practices, and I think that's very much felt through what you're bringing to the table now. So I'm delighted to bring your wisdom to whomever is going to watch this video, and I just wish you the best of luck with everything that's happening for you, for all your years of work.
Same to you, Mara, and
Yeah,
thank you so much yourself for inviting me over and opening this space for this conversation to happen. And
absolutely.
to all your listeners also, like, for taking the time to just sticking out with all of this, and sometimes it might have just been a bit too much, and I understand, because I've been told many times, like, sometimes you just go a bit too
No.
much, but what flows.
You did not go anywhere too much. It's totally speaking my language, and actually we could go way more out. So no, it was absolutely perfect. So I'm going to share all of your links, and the links to the Superfoods course, and also your website and all of that with the video. So is there anything else that you'd like to add before we finish?
Mara, thank you so much. We're also, I don't know when this is going to be out, but we're also doing a yoga retreat in September. So, but it's going to be announced. So whoever subscribes to our website, to bahriaoasis.com, then they should also be receiving an email about our upcoming yoga retreat, and we will be also covering some superfoods during the retreat, and obviously eating the superfoods from the farm. If
Fabulous.
and when, I mean, not when, this is pointed out for September, towards the end of September, and yeah, this opportunity is there. So it's either bahriaoasis.com,
Okay.
which I'm sure you will type it out in the comments below, and also the Bahria Oasis Facebook group. So these are the two platforms that we are releasing most of the content on.
Fantastic. Great. I love it. Thank you so much.
Mara, thank you. Thank you
Perfect.
so much.